The other group of people is like the digital nomad. So a lot of people go into living overseas and living abroad as the digital nomad. This is the mistake that my fiance made, where he's like, yeah, I'm just going to run an agency and have a bunch of clients and freelance and yada, yada. And that's a great place to start, but it's not the end goal. We realized that we had to put our lifestyle first and then figure out how to build a business around our lifestyle. And the lifestyle included if we want to go to Southeast Asia, then we can do it without it completely disrupting our workflow or our business. So how do we build that? And I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make in the digital nomad expat living overseas community. You'll hear a lot about, remote work, or you'll hear a lot about freelancing, but you don't really hear a lot about how do you run a business that runs on autopilot.
Right. And that's really what I would like for our viewers to get out of this, is that I want them to see a path. How do you go from being in the United States with a 9 to 5 corporate job and, the life that goes along with that? And I mean the house, the bills, the whole scenario, or that you're a small business owner and you also have a life that you've built around that business, but you're working all the time.
Yeah. I've
What
been
do you,
both.
yeah. So what do you say to that person? How do you take that person and move them forward? What would be your advice to say, okay, how do I get from here to living abroad in Mexico or wherever it is that they intend to end up?
Yeah, so let's talk about person number one, who's at the 9 to 5, which is literally probably about half of our audience on Entrepreneur Expat. So in that case, you only have like two options. Either go somehow, well, three options. Go convince your boss to let you work abroad. Could be an option. That is the least disruptive of them all. Most of them don't go for it. Just FYI.
No.
Or number two, go find a job that does allow you to work remote. That's actually what my brother did, and then he'll be spending some time with us. So that's an option. Or number three, go start your own thing. And the reason why we're fans of starting to do your own thing is because, let's say, for example, you want to get Mexican residency, which you don't. You can hop around on digital nomad visas and tourist visas and things like that. But let's say that you just don't want to hop around for a while and you would like to have another residency, or we have some people in that community who are on their third or fourth residency because they just want to have options in terms of where they're spending their time without worrying about tourist visas, or they want access to bank accounts, or maybe they need it for health insurance, whatever. There's lots of reasons why people would want residency. For example, in Latin America, in order for you to even become, in order for them to even give you a temporary residency in Mexico, at this point in time, you need to be making over $4,000 a month,
Mhm.
which doesn't seem like a lot, but it kind of is when you take into the account that just a few years ago it was $1,500 a month, and it keeps going up by 10 to 20% every year. They're making it
Right.
harder. And Mexico's not the only country, it's getting harder all over the world. So I would say to that person, how do you start a business where you can hit that benchmark? And then when you go apply for residency, you don't have to worry about trying to get a work permit in Mexico or your employer signing off on it. You will have to worry about finding a consulate that will take business income, but that's a much easier problem to solve than trying to go figure out how to get a work permit in another country so you can live there legally without having to worry about a tourist visa or having to do visa runs. So what we're telling a lot of people is like, what's the country? What's the goal? What's the benchmark? How do we start an online business to hit that benchmark? And then that solves problem number one.
Right.
So that's
And
the nine
I,
to five person. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. And so what about the person that has already become accustomed to having their own business? How do you take that and translate that into something that will travel with you?
Yeah, the biggest problem, and this was me, the biggest problem, and this is also a problem a lot of digital nomads run into, is that they end up in business models that are not scalable. So they're just difficult to maintain when you're on the road. So, for example, we have a client now. She's been in Mexico 3 years. She already has a residency. She's more of like in the virtual assistant space kind of things. But now she's in a position where she's like, hey, I'm looking at my third residency and I'm going to have to pick up the pace on my traveling next year. And I've already experienced that this business model does not work with that. Please help. You know? So I think what happens a lot of the time is because, let's be real, most people on the internet have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to scaling, operating, and growing businesses. And those of us who do is either because we've had mentors who've sold businesses for $150 million, or we already learned the hard way. So you have to find those kinds of mentors